All right, Maggie, I think whenever you're ready.
Okay, sounds
So,
great. And then anyone who joins us hopefully will be able to hop right in. Hi, everybody. As Kyle so graciously set me up, my name is Maggie Santoski. I'm so happy to be with you all today. This session is called Setting the Example from the Top Down, Employee Engagement for Part-Time Teams. So employee satisfaction is key to keeping a team engaged, but as managers of guest-facing teams, we have a pretty unique challenge. How do we boost morale for a part-time team that spends their entire shift with guests? And how do we do it when, honestly, we really don't have the budget to do it? So here's a few session goals and takeaways that I hope to accomplish today. I hope to introduce the concept of a year-round employee engagement plan to you, split out the ideas that take no budget at all, a little bit of budget, and a little more budget, and to review our 3-year plan and our results, and including during the COVID shutdown. 3 of the things I hope that you take away from this session are judging what is the right approach for your team, what's the best bang for your buck as far as your teams are concerned, and some ideas for some ways to engage your team in a more meaningful way. So before we get going, a few housekeeping items. If you have questions as you go, we're happy to have you enter those into the room chat. I'll do my best to address them as we go along if they're timely, or we can review them at the end of the session if we have time. And if anyone is interested in resources from this session, I'm going to put my email address in the chat now. Hopefully you guys can all see that. So please feel free to email me with requests or any questions you think of after the session. So a little bit about me. Since 2008, I've been working in customer service management at cultural institutions in the greater Philadelphia region, including the Franklin Institute and the Please Touch Museum. In November of 2014, I began working at Longwood Gardens as one of the visitor center managers. And at its largest, which was last Christmas season, we were managing a team of about 100 part-time visitor center employees, myself and about 5 other members of our management team. And if you're not familiar with Longwood, Longwood Gardens is the living legacy of Pierre S. DuPont, inspiring people through excellence in garden design, horticulture, education, and the arts. So we're in Kennett Square, right outside of Philly. We're one of the premier horticultural displays in the United States, and before COVID, in the before times, we were hosting about 1.5 million visitors a year. So we like to say that our team handles 3 million visitors a year. They handle 1.5 on the way in and 1.5 on the way out. So a little bit about our employee engagement program. In 2017, we made it a priority to develop and implement an employee engagement program with one overarching goal: to appreciate the staff and recognize their accomplishments, both big and small. So this was important to us because, one, it boosts morale, it fosters a positive work environment, it reinforces commitment and loyalty to the organization, it strengthens retention, which means hopefully less time hiring and training, and employee happiness and engagement decreases absenteeism and increases productivity. So a little quote here from John C. Maxwell: "Acquiring and keeping good people is a leader's most important task." And we really took that seriously. We want to make sure that the people who work for us want to work for us, enjoy working for us, enjoy being at Longwood, because that's going to end up with a happier team and happier guests at the end of the day. We set ourselves some initial broad guidelines. It needed to be common practice. So it needed to be a normal aspect of day-to-day life at work. It couldn't be, once a year we busted out the parade and threw out the confetti and the balloons. It needed to be something kind of from the ground up. It had to be sincere and heartfelt. They know if you're just checking the box, if you're just saying, "Good job today. Good job today. Good job today." You need to mean it. It needed to be timely in order to be effective. So at Longwood, we do yearly performance appraisals. Waiting a year to say, "Hey, remember last January when you did that nice thing for that guest? Great job on that." Not helpful. It needs to happen in the moment when it can, or as close to the moment as it can. We wanted to remember that each person has their own preferences for how they would prefer to be recognized. So some people are a little more shy, a little more private, don't want the parade, the balloons, the confetti. Some people want a billboard on I-95. Those are the extremes. But keeping in mind that you have to set things up that kind of run the gamut so that you're making sure people feel recognized in a way that they're comfortable with. And knowing that recognition can be either formal or informal. So it can be something as formal as presenting an award, or as informal as pulling someone to the side and just saying, hey, I noticed you did a really great job with that guest. Then, to be fair to ourselves and to set our expectations accordingly, we listed out our potential challenges. Number one, probably should have put it in red, the budget. We're a nonprofit. We don't have one. So that was a big challenge for us. Staggered scheduling and staff availability. So Longwood Gardens in the before times, we were open every day, 365, at least 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., sometimes 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. So staff were on different schedules. Their availability were different. They were part-time team members. They were not with us 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. They had varied break times and length. Sometimes their breaks were 15 minutes. Sometimes their breaks were 30 minutes. Sometimes their break was at 11 in the morning. Sometimes the break was at 8 o'clock at night. So there was no real way to say, okay, team, it's noon. We're taking you to lunch. Like, that was just outside of our range. Like I said, our hours of operation, definitely a challenge. When we're open 13, 14 hours a day, there's just not the time. We had to make the time for them. Like I mentioned before, those diversified recognition styles, that kind of comes down to really knowing the people on your team and knowing what they prefer. We knew that staff participation and buy-in was going to be a must for this. You know, the last thing that we wanted was an engagement strategy that they felt obligated to, or that added more pressure to the jobs they were already doing, because that's completely counter to what we were trying to accomplish. And honestly, time for us to build a consistent program. You know, the management team is busy. We're on the floor. We're with the guests. We're doing guest resolutions. We're answering emails. We're with the team 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. So where were we going to find the back end time to really make these things happen? So these were the things that we highlighted as things we were going to have to overcome in this process. So the first thing we did was we started by brainstorming our goals for the program. So we split our goals into 2 columns: things that could be accomplished using small daily or monthly activities, and things that were really more about larger activities or celebrations. And for the first year, we didn't touch column 2. We just didn't. We started small. We'll get back to column 2 in a little bit. But the small daily, monthly activities, what we were trying to accomplish was showing commitment to their professional development, recognizing them as people and not just as staff, giving them an opportunity to have their voices heard, creating interactive activities that would help connect them to each other and to Longwood as an institution, empowering them to help other people, and providing opportunities to reward them for their victories, both large and small. The larger activities that we will get to eventually, we wanted to create an event atmosphere. So we wanted something special for the team above and beyond the usual, the balloons, the confetti, the parade. And ultimately, we wanted to involve vice president and director level staff from guest services and expand that recognition beyond the visitor center team alone, out into the larger guest services department. And hopefully, eventually, though we're not there yet, out into the entire organization as a whole. So first, some of the daily and monthly activities that we worked on. These first things are things that really involve no budget at all, a little bit of time, but no monetary output. First was professional development. So we're lucky enough to have a team that wants to have these kind of opportunities, but we realized a few things right away. So first, they needed to be on demand. The team needed to be able to access these things when their particular area was having downtime. It needed to be independent from manager or lead oversight. They had to have access to it when they had time. They needed to be easily accessible. Things that involved remembering account information were always less successful, especially if it involved a third-party service like lynda.com or Star 12. Better if it's right at their fingertips and didn't involve any login at all, or at most their Longwood login that they use for their other Longwood related things. They needed things that ran a range of time commitments. So little articles or help texts that could be read in 3 to 5 minutes were great, because in a lull, they were able to kind of read right through that. Videos that ran 5 to 10 minutes, anything longer than that would really involve coordination with the management team to take them off the floor, or playlists of little videos that could be returned to as time permitted. So for example, several members of our team stated in their performance appraisals that they wanted more training or help with Excel, since we use Excel to track our lost and found log. So we put together a document with a list of links to some YouTube videos on Excel for beginners, and we provided it to them via our SharePoint page. So if they were interested in viewing it, they had access. And quite a few of them did take advantage of that opportunity, which was great, because they asked for it and we provided it, which was the goal all along. Something that seems really small but makes a big impact was compiling a list of staff birthdays. So we hang this list every month by the time clock. It's important to note that the time clock is not in an area where guests can see it, so that they could wish each other a happy birthday. And we did not list birth years or ages. We don't want to start that that ball rolling. And we immediately removed staff from the list if they requested it. We only had one person do so, but if they asked for their name to be removed, we took it off right away. We also had all the managers sign a birthday card for each staff member, and we gave it to them on the week of their birthday, or on their birthday if at all possible, but if they were off on their birthday, as close to their birthday as we could get. You can see a little example here. I don't really have James Bond or Polly Pocket working for me. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. We're always encouraging the team to share their ideas with us for process improvement, efficiency, elevating the guest experience. And we originally encouraged them to email that to us, and they absolutely still do. But in case they wanted to submit anonymous feedback that wasn't attached to who they were and just wanted to be completely honest, we did create suggestion boxes and place them in 2 different places in the visitor center to encourage that. There is one very important caveat to putting out a call out for ideas. You absolutely have to follow through and acknowledge it. The management team, we have a compilation of ideas from the box, along with notes on who suggested it, if we know who suggested it, and what we did in response to that suggestion. So if it was something that we couldn't implement or can't implement right now, we list why, and we double back with the staff member and tell them why. If it's something we can do, it's assigned to one of the managers to carry out, and then the person who suggested it is given credit when it's rolled out. The last thing you want when you put out a suggestion box is the impression that it's a black hole, because that's going to be counter to everything you're trying to accomplish. So some of these things start to tip over into low budget, but we introduced the idea of gamification. So creating learning games with small prizes that focused on things we needed the team to learn, or a new technology we were rolling out, or just encouraging them to interact with each other and strengthen their team connections. On the manager side of things, we divided the year and rotated each month between us. So each month, one of us was in charge of setting up the game for the month. So some examples of these included guessing Black Friday's total attendance, since Black Friday is traditionally one of our busiest days of the year. Asking staff for pictures of themselves as children, or pictures of their pets, or places they had traveled to, and having the team match the team member to the appropriate picture. We did movie March Madness and a core values bingo. So for most of these, we had either one winner, like the attendance guest, whoever got closest, or we pulled a prize winner from a pool of completed activities like the bingo card and the matching games. So here's just a little example of movie March Madness, which I may or may not have borrowed from a previous employer. Thank you, Patrick. So we laid out 16 Oscar-winning movies, and we had the teams fill out brackets all the way through to a champion. And then each week we had them vote and narrowed everything down. And then everyone who picked the correct champion got a raffle ticket, and then we pulled a raffle ticket for a big winner. For core values bingo, every square in the board was something related to our core values. So visiting the orchid display, or attending the all-staff meeting, or donating food to the canned food drive. And for every bingo they got a raffle ticket. And then we pulled a raffle ticket at the end for a prize. So Tied to the games were inspirational boards, where we gave them a question and had them write their response on the blackboard or the Post-it. So some of those included things like, what are you grateful for around Thanksgiving? Or what was your favorite Thanksgiving food? Your favorite movie as a child? Your favorite holiday song? What makes you smile? Just to have them start thinking a little bit about those kind of things and to share those things with each other. So these are again, in that time clock hallway where they're not visible to guests, but it's there for the team to interact with each other. And they were very, very enthusiastic about it. You could see we got a lot of writing on some of those boards. We also take the time to recognize them for both fun things as a team and for their individual achievements. So we put together some things for National Recognition Days, like National Lollipop Day. We also put together some treat-themed puns. Everybody loves a pun. So take 5 for a job well done, attached to take 5 bars, or you're a lifesaver, attached to a roll of lifesavers. And these were just a quick way to instantly reward great service and the team going the extra mile. On the other side of the time clock hallway, across from the boards, we added a recognition wall. So we attach comments from surveys from guests, highlighting the ways that the guests appreciate their efforts. If a guest doesn't name a staff member by name, but they give us enough information to figure out who that staff member was, we do add their name to it and call them out too. And sometimes they're very specific. So, you know, Connie assisted me on the phone, Trish at ticketing. Sometimes they're not as specific. They just say, I brought a bus in and the ladies who did our tickets were helpful and kind. Everyone was great. So that way, everybody's getting a little bit of something, even if they're not being called out by name. So to be perfectly transparent, we did have a few less successful small activities. So we tried doing movie days for the team. We paid for a license to show popular movies during breaks and lunches. They didn't really engage with this for a couple of reasons. There just wasn't enough time for them to get into the movie. If they have a 15-minute break and they're trying to eat, and it's a movie they've never seen, they're not going to sit down and watch just a 15-minute snip. They didn't want to miss out on socializing with each other during break. The movie was running in the auditorium, which is next to the break room, but not in the break room. So they felt like they couldn't talk through the movie. They didn't want to interrupt, but they still wanted to socialize. And honestly, sometimes they just forgot about it. Since it wasn't in the break room, we had signs, but if they're running in for a 15-minute break and running back out, they just completely missed it. So that one was a miss for us. That wasn't worth it. The other thing, just to double back on the treat-based recognition, you know, providing the team with treats is great, but we realized we had to be pretty careful with that. So some team members don't eat certain things. Either they can't or they don't. And nothing tells a team member that you know them well by offering them something they're allergic to. So you got to be really careful with that. It can become something to poke fun at. Oh, here they come with the treats again. So you want to make sure that you're using that sparingly or connecting it back to something specific, like a national day of chocolate or cupcakes or something like that. So a quick note here about guest resolution. So this one may seem a little out of place for employee engagement, but it really is integral to our employee morale. We realized that the managers had ways of guest resolution that the team didn't feel empowered to use. So as a result, they would get an unhappy guest, they would stumble through the interaction, they'd summon a manager, and then we looked like heroes when we were able to resolve something for the guest. And that was the complete opposite of what we wanted. We wanted them to be the heroes. So we developed some tools for the team to use at their discretion. So we trusted them and their discretion for the use of these things. We supplied an envelope of golden tickets. So those are admission tickets, good for any visit. For when guests arrived on blackout dates and they couldn't come back another day. We provided some $5 gift cards and small tokens like Longwood chocolate bars or magnets or postcards to give to a guest when they shared that it was a special occasion or they had a difficult time on their way to Longwood. They sat in traffic, their car broke down, they had some kind of issue, or they just needed a little something extra. We empowered them to provide extensions to promotions and other time-sensitive items. So rather than a guest calling in and saying, oh, I missed that promotion by one day, and the staff member saying, hold on, let me check, put them on hold, go find someone, ask, is it okay? Yes, it's okay. Back on the phone, back to the guest. Yes, my manager said it's okay. We just empowered them to handle it. And that way, we gave them the ability at their discretion to make the guests happy and create a first-time fix that makes everyone happy. And some of this idea came from a story from the outstanding book, Thanks for Coming In Today by Charles Ryan Minton. So he shares a story, he's in the hotel business, but he shares a story about a hotel clerk on her first weekend alone at the desk that he empowered to make things right for guests who were having difficulties. So he had a guest come in and check in. He went upstairs to his room and his key didn't work in the lock. So he came back downstairs and let the front desk clerk know that his key wasn't working. And she immediately comped his entire visit, which she definitely over assisted him, to be honest. And did he have a conversation with her that there were other options that she had that might have been more appropriate? Yes, but she wasn't in trouble for doing that. And I think it's important to note that when you empower the team to make those decisions at their discretion, it may take some gentle coaching to get them to understand the appropriate level of response, but they should never be reprimanded for making someone stay better, even if they do go just a little overboard. So this section feels a little out of place, which what's going on in the world right now, but I did still want to review it for a couple of reasons. It was a very important part of our program in years 2 and 3. There may be some ideas that can be simplified and still used while you guys are working within tight budgets, and 2020 has to end sometime. It has to, right? Please. So hopefully these are ideas you can carry forward, even if it's not something that you can use right now. So after the first year or so of successful small activities, we wanted to do something big. So National Customer Service Week falls in the first full week of October. So normally it would have been last week, which is perfect timing for us right before Longwood Christmas, which is our busiest season of the year. So in 2018, we picked a movie theme for National Customer Service Week, and we planned a week of events for the team. You can see this is our calendar of events right here. We played movies in the auditorium and served concessions. We arranged for them to take a tour of some of the spaces that people, even employees, don't usually get to access. We did a potluck. We served them breakfast. We gave them a packet of Longwood themed games and gave them raffle tickets for everything they participated in. We made a Longwood version of Clue, and we had a party. So our party was Oscar themed, though we called ours the Pierres after our founder. We invited them all to dress up, which almost all of them took advantage of. And we gave every single one of them an award of some kind. And we even had them cast ballots for some of the awards for each other. And as you may be able to tell from the photos, they had a blast. They had a really, really great time with this. So there they are on the red carpet, coming in, getting their photos done. And that was such a success that we used it for the base of the larger guest services department meeting that spring for over 225 staff. We took some inspiring movie quotes for the welcome slides. And we highlighted one person from each guest services division for each award. This was very well received, and it added a little spark to meetings that were starting to become a little dull. Our large guest services team meetings were starting to become very rote, very, here's the programming that's coming up, make sure you're safe, here are the next things, thanks for coming. So this took them by surprise in a good way. So now we had a problem. One of the core tenets in the guest services department at Longwood is to exceed the guest expectations. So we set expectations pretty high in 2018, and they knew National Customer Service Week happened every year. So how were we going to top that in 2019? So in 2019, our Customer Service Week theme was Every Moment Counts, Make It Magic. So we brought back some of those more popular events like this behind the scenes tours and the potlucks, the movies, and then we added some new ones like pumpkin decorating, where the staff decorated and voted on 4 different categories of winners. Aren't they cute? And our big guest services team meeting happened to fall during that week, so we made that our big event. So we invited John Petz, motivational speaker and magician, to do a remote presentation for our team and presented them each with a copy of his book, Significance in Simple Moments. I know it sounds corny, but he was amazing, amazing. And they loved it. One of the other highlights of the week was a Longwood themed escape room. I'm sure all of you know that escape rooms prior to COVID were blowing up in popularity. So this was my favorite activity that we did for the week. And this is still something that you can put together fairly low budget if people are willing to lend you props. We really didn't spend a lot of money on this event. We themed it after a meeting between our founder, Mr. DuPont, and his electrician, Russell Brewer. And we had to set up some important considerations. So first, we assigned the teams to each other and to their time slots. So we were able to make sure that the floor was covered while teams tackled the room. The teams were a mix of people from different areas in the visitor center to encourage cross-rotational teamwork. The room was Longwood themed, but staff did not need special knowledge of Longwood to complete it. So even though we based it on the founder, they didn't have to know any esoteric, strange, historical things to get through the room. We did make test runs to make sure that the team could complete it in the 40 minutes they were given or less. We had some close calls, I'm not gonna lie, but when we're working on employee morale and employee engagement, we don't want them to feel like failures. So we wanted to make sure that it was a completable room. And the room was attended by a room manager at all times and was able to gently direct teams who were struggling so that all the teams completed the escape room. So we gave them 4 different challenges. We gave them a puzzle piece hunt. So we had them solve a few riddles to find pieces of a puzzle. We had a puzzle where they had to smell a citrus oil diffuser and figure out that it was citrus and know that they were looking for the orange in the little fruit basket, and that had a QR code on it that showed them where the next key was. And bonus for that, we were just starting to use QR codes in our marketing for guests for accessing things. So this helped them gain familiarity with the tech. Puzzle 3 was 52 pickup. So we put all these cards out and we had 1 card from each suit missing, and then they used the top of the lock to put the numbers in order to get the key. And then the 4th puzzle, they just, they had a black light and they were picking out words highlighted in black light marker, and the words were from copies of letters our founder wrote during his lifetime. So this was our inspiration, which is a recreation of our founder's desk that we had set up one Christmas. And this was Pierre's desk in the escape room. Almost everything you see here was donated to us, loaned to us, I should say. So my assistant director donated the glass lamp and the little glass sample tiles. My mother-in-law donated to us for a loan the globe on the left-hand side. The gift shop lent us this display case. So we really did have kind of all hands on deck helping with this.
Maggie, we're getting some questions in the chat about budget.
Oh, sure.
Monetary and staff time for this, because this is looking very impressive. And well, as you know, but not everybody else knows, I worked at Longwood for a little while, and time was at a premium. So
absolutely.
How'd you do all this? Because I don't think we could have done that back when I was there. But
sure. So monetarily, I would have to get back to you on that. I know we did have a bigger budget for National Customer Service Week than we did for these other things, because we really did present it in the budgeting as a way to engage with the employees, which was really an initiative that Longwood was looking to do. As far as time is concerned, we started working on this really in June, in dribs and drabs, as we had time, as things, you know, this is something that can't be planned in September for an October run. We really needed that lead time for this. So, you know, for example, in June, we started pulling together the escape room, thinking about puzzles, ideas, starting collecting props and things for people to hold. And honestly, some of the puzzles kind of evolved out of what we were able to borrow from other people. just things that we really realized were like, okay, you have a deck of cards? Great. That's going to be one of the puzzles. Oh, we can print out a bunch of letters. We'll buy a blacklight highlighter for $2 off of Amazon. Perfect. Done. So a lot of this stuff kind of evolved from the constraints that we were under, both time-wise and money-wise. Does that help?
And did you engage, did the staff help at all with this, or was it primarily just your team of managers that planned it all out for the staff to participate in?
Sure. So we did have some staff who helped. For some of it, we couldn't have them help. Like, for example, for the escape room, I did have some staff help me, but they were staff who expressed they would much rather help with it than participate in it, because if they helped with it, they couldn't run it, they couldn't be in it. So we did have help with quite a few of these things. And even things like when we put together the schedule of events, we had a staff member go through and write us a pun for every single event title, because that's what they were good at. And that helped us. Those little things start to add up when the team is engaged and interested.
Great, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so those are some more of those puzzles, and they're the team working diligently in teams of 3 on the puzzles. And here is our winning team with a blistering time of 7 minutes and 44 seconds. We gave them 40 minutes, and this team finished in 7 minutes and 44 seconds. And then I said, great, I'm going to lunch. I'll see the next team at 1 o'clock. So they were awesome. And then we got a few kudos from the team over the years regarding our efforts, which is, of course, what we want. We want them to enjoy it. That's the whole point. And my favorite, and the one that inspired the title of this panel, is the one from our staff member, Ronnie. Thank you to all of you for a great, clever, fun party for us. It was obvious how much work went into the whole evening, something that has always struck me at Longwood. For us to exhibit the core values to the guests, we must see the example of them from the top down. You are all very good examples for us every day. And by the way, you all looked fabulous. So that's the dream, right? That's what we want. We want them to know that we care about them, that we're engaged with them, and then they engage with each other and they engage with other people. All right, last thing, the elephant in the room. So on March 14th, like much of the country, we shut down due to COVID-19 concerns, and the part-time team was furloughed, and we were closed until mid-June. So that was just over 3 months. So this created a new challenge for us. You know, how do you keep connections alive for a team who are separated and scared? I mean, we were all scared. So here were some of our challenges. Our staff were furloughed, so there could be no implication of requiring them to participate. We wanted to avoid visitor center related content to keep the distinction clear. And this was a complete 180 from our engagement initiatives of the past, where we tried to connect them all back to Longwood somehow. The staff were scattered. They didn't have their home base. They didn't have Longwood. So how do you reconnect them? Unfortunately, for most of us, we know the answer to that was virtually, and not all of our staff were technologically savvy. So how do you support these new initiatives without being able to reach them? So how do we do it? First of all, we continue to celebrate their birthdays, but instead of the high touch option of sending cards to the staff, we send them each a personal email on their birthday now. And that includes staff that are still furloughed, because right now they are still part of our team, even if they're not present on site. We did a few Zoom meetups. So we sent an invite to the entire team to several hour-long Zoom meetups where they could reconnect and see some familiar faces again. We created a message board on a free board hosting website. That's boardhost.com. And we encouraged them to interact with each other on things like, what are you reading? What are you watching? What are you cooking? What's going on in your garden? There was a tech help board for people who were stuck. So we really wanted them to continue to engage with each other and for us to be able to engage with them. We also sent them 3 emails a week. Each manager took turns sending 3 emails a week. On Mondays, we sent them the Some Good News segment from John Krasinski. On Wednesdays, we got to send them a fun or interesting video of our choice. So you can see here to the right, my choice was the entire collection of The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross. And then on Fridays, we sent them a link to what Longwood was producing from the marketing department called Our Gardens, Your Home, which is the content the members were receiving about what was happening at Longwood during the shutdown. And as we got closer to reopening, we wanted to show the team all of the changes that had happened in the visitor center. So we made our own Some Good News segment, and they loved it. And there's our visitor center cat, Primo, starring as our weatherman. He's obviously thrilled to help us out with that. So how are we going to step forward from here? We really don't know. I mean, our commitment to engaging with our employees is stronger and more important than ever, but some things, you know, have gone on the back burner. We did not do National Customer Service Week last week. We couldn't. We just were so behind with everything that happened with the closure that it just wasn't an option for us this year. But we are continuing to make sure that the team who have come back and the team that are still furloughed know that they're in the front of our hearts. We're engaging with them. We want them to feel appreciated, even though these bigger initiatives are temporarily on pause. So just a few final things on the back end. You know, again, not all people value overt recognition. So you want to find a range of ways to acknowledge your team so those staff are still included. Participation in the small activities should really be voluntary. If you force them to engage, it's not going to give you the same benefits, and it can be detrimental instead. And if participation isn't as active as you hoped, instead of being upset, which is, of course, my first go-to, I'm like, oh, I work so hard. I wonder why they're not excited. Why aren't they excited? You have to get to the heart of it. And if you are going to do mandatory activities, try to tie them to events that would have been mandatory anyway. So our big guest services meeting is mandatory for all guest services employees. So we tied that big award event to that meeting since they had to be there anyway. And really, at the very, very end of it, it all comes down to knowing your team. There are going to be missteps. You're going to mess up. You will. We did. But adapting it and adjusting it and re-engaging with them to really find out what works and what doesn't is going to be key. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Maggie.
You're welcome. Sorry if I talked fast.
It looks like we have a few minutes for questions, if anyone has any.
I have a quick question for you. Sorry, my video is off. I can't.
Oh, that's okay.
Get it on quick enough.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, how are you, Maggie?
Good, how are you?
This was great. Thank you. Super helpful. We have a little bit of an issue where our staff will come when they know there's a budget involved, and they won't come when there's no budget.
Got it.
Could you speak a little bit more to some of the low budget things that you did and how you were able to get people to engage in those as well?
Sure. So really the low budget things were things that we kind of presented and made available to them, and then we encouraged it. Don't get me wrong. So, you know, we have little meetings in the morning, little lineup meetings before our day starts, where we'd say, don't forget, we're doing bingo. Don't forget, we're doing movie March Madness. But at the end of the day, we had to make sure that they were coming to it because they were excited about it. If we forced it, they weren't doing it. So when we first started rolling it out, you know, we gave them all a bingo sheet, for example. We're like, don't forget to turn it in, don't forget to turn it in, don't forget to turn it in. And then it becomes a chore instead of something fun, you know? And I think that at the heart of it, they won't feel appreciated if we're just giving them homework. And I think that's where we started to realize that if they wanted to participate, they found a way to participate. And some of them participated enthusiastically. Let's just put it that way. I had people who had filled in entire bingo sheets and then were asking for new bingo sheets. I was like, oh God, I have to make a second bingo sheet. So I think that really, I completely understand. We had some people who didn't participate in anything because they didn't want to, that they were there to work their job, clock in, clock out, go. But they did start to soften a little bit. I think as they saw that the rest of their teammates were engaging and were doing things, For example, one of the things that I didn't share from the year before that, we did a bingo where the bingo was not about Longwood at all, where it was about each other, right? So we said, find someone who has a white car, find someone who's been to Arizona, and it made them talk to each other. So in that instance, even if the people who weren't participating in bingo weren't participating, they were participating because people who had the bingo cards were like, hey, do you have a white car? Hey, have you ever been to Arizona? And it drew them in, even though they thought they weren't involved. Does that help at all? I think I said a lot, but I'm not sure if that helps.
Yeah, that's really helpful. We did something similar happen recently where we did a scavenger hunt based on the site.
Mm-hmm.
Pushed it all week, like, oh, it's so exciting, it's going to be great, you should come. And then like half of them came, and we have a much smaller team than you, so we ended up with only like 6, you know. So the people who came said it was amazing, but then the people who didn't come said, oh, I couldn't be bothered to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Like,
And one of the other things that we did, this did kind of offshoot from how we used to run our visitor center team meetings that we did 4 times a year, where those were mandatory meetings, and they had, we tried to make them more interesting. So at one point we did kind of a riddle scavenger hunt throughout the whole garden where they were going from area to area to area, but that only worked because it was mandatory, because we made them come. And we realized pretty quickly that if we made them do the little things, even the big things were going to feel like a chore, you know? So there's a line and a distinction that we had to draw where we had to say, we're okay with not everybody participating in this thing, but we absolutely want everyone to participate in this thing and figure out which things fell in which bucket.
Thank
Maggie,
you.
we have a few questions in the chat. One is, can you share the title of that, the first book you mentioned and the author?
Sure, absolutely. So it's Thanks for Coming In Today. I'll put it in the chat. Today by Charles Ryan Minton.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. It's a quick read, but it's great.
Okay. Another question on here was, why did you feel some of these things were the role of managers instead of a cross-departmental social committee?
Sure. So I will say that at Longwood, we are still working on the issues of silos, of departmental silos, where we had presented the idea of some of these things at a higher level or a larger level. And not that we got shot down, but it was constantly kind of pushed to the side. Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. So we finally had to commit and say, you know what? We're going to have to get to it, because if we don't get to it, no one will get to it. It's just never going to happen. So we're hopeful, we were hopeful before the world ended, that giving this actual physical example and saying, we've been doing it and they love it, why can't we do it across the board, would expand it out to a point where it would become the role of something like a social committee. Like, we have an activities committee at Longwood, but it's like, we're doing pumpkin carving for Halloween and we're doing a Christmas cookie bake-off. And then we don't hear from them again for 10 months. So we are enthusiastic about the idea that these things will eventually become part of the activities committee's responsibility. It's just we needed to be the proof of concept.
Another question. How did you figure out what they wanted to do in terms of your staff? Survey,
Sure.
Trial and error?
Sure. So some of it was trial and error. Some of it was, so for example, one of the boards that we did was for a day of service, where we asked them to do something outside of work for the community and then bring back proof, and then we would give them a prize, and almost nobody participated in that. And not because they're not good people, and not because they don't appreciate their communities and are not willing to outreach, but it just fell by the wayside, so those are things that, as we started to work through it, as we hit year 2, year 3, we looked and realized, oh wow, participation wasn't great on that one, was it? No, it really wasn't. Okay, that's not something that they're engaged in, and that's not something that they're willing to participate in. We did ask them after, especially after the customer service weeks, in that huge big swath of things, what things did you guys like the most? And those are the things we carried forward into the 2019 customer service week. Things like the potluck, things like the behind the scenes tours. They really, really, really enjoyed those things. And they made that clear to us in 2018. So we brought them back in 2019.
And I apologize, we're out of time. One last question.
Sure.
And then unfortunately, I'm going to have to switch this room over for the next presentation. But this question from Kelsey is, have you considered what kinds of things you'll want to do in a future where there may still be considerations about high touch, shared food, large gathering scenarios?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why, even though we reopened in June and we technically possibly could have pulled something together for this October, we really put the brakes on. Those are considerations that I think are going to become part of our new normal. I think for a long time, people are going to be a little uncomfortable with potlucks. Let's just throw that one out as an example. We don't have anything back on the cards yet. I mean, I think that some of that's going to have to be reaching out to the team. You know, what things are you comfortable with now? If we did A, B, C, X, Y, Z, which things would you feel like you were willing to participate in the world that we're in right now? This is uncharted territory for all of us. So I have no shame in doubling back to my team and saying, listen, I don't want to assume. You know, are you comfortable with this? Would you be willing to do it? Or is it really not something is it something we should put on the back burner or just never do?
Well, thank you so much, Maggie.